Hi, it's Jensen Maxwell Fitness, and in this video I'm going to demonstrate how to perform the Dumbbell Goblet Adductor Slide. I'll explain what muscles are being targeted, as well as why we would include this in our current training program. All we need for this exercise is a slider and a dumbbell. So we'll begin the movement with one foot on the slider, and we will also have one foot planted on the ground. The first part of the movement, we're going to have flexion of the hips. So we're driving our hips back just as we would in a squat. And at the same time, we are going to allow the foot on the slider to slide away from the midline of our body, keeping the toe pointed forward and then bringing it back towards the midline. And as we adduct away from our body, we're getting a good stretch of the adductors, and I want you to press into that foot, sliding it back in, and you're just going to activate all on the inside of your thigh even more. Now, in terms of the foot that's planted, I don't want your knee to move to the left or to the right. It just stays in the same plane at all times. And when you're squatting down, be conscious of where your knee is relative to your toes. You don't want the knee to come too far over the toes, as over time that can cause knee pain. So once we finish on one side, we're gonna switch the slider to the opposite foot, get back into the goblet position, and then we're gonna complete the same number of reps on this side. And if you don't have a slider handy at home, what we can do is we can just simply use a tea towel, place it on the ground, and then we can perform the same movement just with things that you can find around the house. So the adductor complex is a group of 5 muscles that attach to your pelvis and also attach to your femur, or the inside of your thigh. And this series of muscles is responsible for bringing your leg towards the midline of your body, but it also assists in hip flexion and extension, as you would see in a squat. And also helps to stabilize your hips and in some cases your knee as well. So one thing I found interesting is that the adductor magnus is actually the most effective hip extensor when your hips are in a flexed position. So for example, at the bottom of the squat. And they're superior to the glutes and the hamstrings. So it's definitely a muscle you don't want to neglect. And that's why a lot of heavy power lifters feel an intense soreness or delayed onset muscle soreness on the inside of their thighs after a heavy squatting session. And this is reflected in a study performed in the Journal of Applied Physiology. The study followed 10 men over a 10-week period. There were 2 groups. One group performed half squats and the other group performed full squats. And at the end of the program, they took MRI imaging of the quads, the glutes, the adductors, and the hamstrings to see the growth between the 2 programs. And it was determined that the relative growth in the adductor muscles was significantly greater in the full squat group than the half squat group, which indicates that the adductors are activated much more significantly at the bottom of the squat when the hips are flexed. So another benefit of this exercise is that it takes us outside of the sagittal plane, which is where most of our training occurs. And the sagittal plane is movements that are forward and back, or flexion and extension. So an example of this would be the squat or a deadlift or even sprinting. The 2 other planes of movement are the frontal plane or coronal plane and also the transverse plane. And the frontal plane being side to side movements, and the transverse plane is twisting. So exercises in the sagittal plane should be the foundation of your training program, but don't forget to include movements in the frontal plane as well as the transverse plane. If all of our exercises are just in one plane, you could develop imbalances, and this can lead to injuries down the road. You can get joint pain, and it can lead to poor athletic performance if you're not training in all three planes. If you're looking for a complete home fitness program that requires minimal equipment and you can complete it at home, up on my website, jensenmaxwellfit.com, I have a free 30-day challenge, so you're welcome to check that out. So I hope you found this video helpful. I'll be sharing more exercise demonstrations in the near future, so feel free to subscribe to my channel and you'll be notified as soon as I upload it. Thanks.